A 2-week-old baby was found alive, crying beside her mother's body. More than 20 years later, investigators still don't know who was responsible. This is the unsolved case of Sondresha Koins. To understand why this case shocked the community so deeply, you have to look at where it happened. Germantown, Tennessee is known for its tree-lined streets, low crime rate, and exceptionally safe neighborhoods. For decades, the city maintained a rare record, 0 unsolved homicides. But in March of 2003, a single unresolved case changed that record forever, leaving behind a mystery that investigators are still trying to solve today. The case began with a period of silence that lasted for several days. 23-year-old Sondresha Koins was on maternity leave, adjusting to life with her newborn daughter. When Sondresha uncharacteristically stopped contacting those close to her, a concerned coworker decided to check on her at her residence. But that check-in led to a discovery that changed the community forever. Upon entering the house, authorities located Sondresha deceased in the living room. However, as responding officers secured the scene, they discovered a second person inside the home. Resting nearby was her 2-week-old infant daughter, who was found alive and crying. The child was safely rescued from the home, having survived the ordeal physically unharmed. But for the detectives arriving on the scene, the circumstances raised an immediate, complex question. Who had entered the residence, and what was the motive behind the incident? As the initial processing of the scene began, the first clues began to point the investigation in a very specific direction. To establish a clear picture of what happened, investigators had to reconstruct the final timeline. Because Sondresha was on maternity leave, her schedule kept her primarily at home with her newborn. Forensics indicated that she had been deceased for several days before the coworker arrived to check on her well-being. During that entire multi-day window, nothing unusual had been reported by neighbors on the quiet street. When the forensic team examined the entry points of the home, they made a critical discovery: there were absolutely no signs of forced entry. The windows were fully intact, and the doors showed no damage whatsoever. This lack of physical disruption immediately led investigators to a specific working theory. They believed Sondresha may have known the person responsible and opened the door to let them inside voluntarily. But that wasn't the only clue investigators found. The next discovery made the case even more confusing. Investigators found no clear evidence of theft, and the home did not appear to have been ransacked. This made a burglary appear less likely, though investigators kept an open mind as the investigation continued. The lack of a clear financial motive suggested that Sondresha herself may have been the intended target, though investigators never identified a definitive motive. With no clear answers inside the home, the Germantown Police Department launched an expansive investigation into her background. Over the course of the inquiry, detectives interviewed more than 100 people, speaking with friends, family members, neighbors, and associates. Investigators looked for any hidden conflicts, recent disputes, or unusual interactions in her life. Yet, the interviews yielded no definitive leads, as acquaintances described Sondresha as a dedicated new mother focused entirely on her child. Seeking an alternative angle, local authorities collaborated heavily with state investigators to explore wider regional patterns. At the time, a series of violent home invasions had been reported in the surrounding Mid-South areas. Police worked to compare the forensic details, wondering if Sondresha's home had been targeted by the same individuals. What detectives uncovered next ruled out one of their strongest theories. The evidence simply did not support a connection, and the home invasion theory was ultimately ruled out by the task force. As the initial leads dried up, the intense momentum of the investigation began to slow. Despite the combined efforts of local and state law enforcement, the case eventually went cold, marking the only unresolved homicide in Germantown's history. Years passed without a major development, leaving the family to wait for answers while the investigation remained open but quiet. A potential breakthrough emerged when law enforcement arrested an individual tied to unrelated home invasions in the general area. Because of the timing and proximity, detectives re-examined the facts to see if this individual could be connected to the 2003 incident. Investigators looked closely at the timelines and the available case data to see if a link could be established. Ultimately, the lead did not produce the necessary breakthrough. Following a thorough review, authorities found no evidence connecting the suspect to the scene of Sondresha's death. No charges were ever filed in relation to her case. The lead ultimately did not move the investigation forward, and the case remained unsolved. The case remains open to this day. More than 2 decades have passed since March 2003. The 2-week-old baby girl who was rescued from the living room that day has grown into adulthood, living her life without the mother who cared for her in those first 2 weeks. Sondresha's family continues to hope that new information will one day bring answers. More than 2 decades later, many of the key questions remain unanswered. Detectives continue to encourage anyone with information, no matter how small it may seem, to come forward. If you want to support our focus on keeping unresolved cases in the public eye so they are never forgotten, please hit the like button and subscribe.